TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode here on the channel. We've managed, finally, after a long, long time, to nail Charles down for a show. But more importantly, or equally important, Hos. We've managed to get Hos during the weekend to join us for a show. So both of you are equally important to the show. Good to see you, Charles and Hos.
Good to see you guys. Hope everyone's
wonderful to see you guys too, Andrew. It's as you know, it's been pretty hard to tie me down on a weekend because I have lots of interstate gigs and traveling around Australia. And Charles, always good to see you, brother. It's an honor to do a show with you.
Oh,
and
the honor's mine, you guys.
Every time I'm watching a show that you're on, Charles, I think of like 100 questions that I want to ask you about, so some of these beautiful stories that you tell from back in the day, especially. And I can never remember them. So if I think of some today, of course, I'll ask you. But, I think I'm going to have to keep Apple Notes in my phone of all the things that I want to ask you when I think of them randomly during the week or the month. And then we'll have a show where I'll ask you all the questions in one hit.
Bring it on, brother. It's all good, man. It's all good, Simon.
Awesome.
Hope you guys are doing well. It's good to see everybody. It's been a rough day, a rough week, doing a lot of work. North Carolina thinks it's spring. We got an early spring, and
right.
Work is crazy. Absolutely nuts. But it is so good to be here with you guys. This is really cool. Going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. It's good to see you guys. And we've got a few people watching. When we get up to about 10 people, Hos, I'll get you to do a bit of a shout out, bro, if you want. But we just want to remind people, if you're watching on a replay, we'll attach everybody's social media accounts to this video. We'll have Hos's social media accounts and also Charles's as well. While we're talking about social media accounts and bits and pieces, Hos, in the green room, we were talking about a video that you've been producing that's in conjunction with just a small little event that's happening in your backyard.
Yes, the small little event that's happening. I wish it was happening in my actual backyard, but it's close enough. It's only about sort of 15 minutes away, of course, is the Formula One here in Melbourne this weekend. And as most people probably know, I'm a huge Formula One fan and have been for years. And so it's very exciting. I'm not going in to see the race live this afternoon, which would be about, sort of 2 or 3 hours after this show finishes airing live. But that's just because, to be honest, I like watching the race itself with the TV coverage, because you get all the nuances. You get the commentators, you get to see like multiple angles of what's happening, and you get to hear what the drivers are saying to their teams inside the car. And the energy at the track, of course, is amazing, but you just lose, for me, as a fan that knows all the machinations behind the scenes, you just lose too many nuances. But I'm very excited. It's my favorite time of year. So yeah, very exciting.
That's so
fantastic. Cool. Fantastic. I'm glad you enjoy it, bro, because I'm an F1 fan too, and I was, watching the last couple of days, Charles. They have like the testing and the speed laps and breaking in the tires and everything goes on for about 2 or 3 days beforehand. And last night when they were racing for the pole, Hos, as you know, it's phenomenal. On the back straights there, they're getting up to 310 Ks, taking corners at 110 Ks, Hos. It's just like...
It's absolutely crazy. Everyone knows that Formula One cars are super fast, but really where they leave all the other sort of, racing car categories behind is in the corners, because they have so much downforce because of the aerodynamics over the wings and everything, that they take corners like they're just glued to the road. So it's when you see them going around some of those fast corners, you just think, how is that thing staying on the road? It's quite It's quite amazing. It's very exhilarating. Yeah, at TV coverage, it looks fast, but when you're standing there at the fence on the track by a corner, you can't even believe it. It's like they're supersonic, you know. But anyway, those drivers can sit in that car for 90 minutes constantly doing those speeds with those G-forces around the corners is pretty amazing, you know.
You got to be physically fit to do that
very,
job
very cool.
too. It's not easy. Not easy.
We've got a friend in the chat, Ben Coombs, talking about racing, and we're talking about proper racing, Ben. We're talking about car racing. We're not talking about that racing that you guys do.
Wait a minute.
Just going around in a circle. We're talking about real racing, Charles.
NASCAR country, gentlemen. Ben, I'm your brother. When Ben comes to visit North Carolina, guys, next time he does, he used to make it a regular pilgrimage, and I think it was COVID that actually slowed him down. But 20 miles from me is Charlotte Motor Speedway, and he's going to catch a race, and we are going to hook up and do a little live thing when that actually occurs. But this is NASCAR country, you guys, and I love a little Formula One, though. Don't get me wrong. I came from California, and that's where they do the Long Beach Grand Prix, which is a big Formula One thing for the States. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Formula One, I love the NASCAR too, you know, so it's not like, I'm completely one-eyed about racing, because really I love a lot of different forms of car racing. But a bunch of years ago, I was heavily invested as a punter, that is, not financially, God, but heavily invested in all these different, like I was watching NASCAR every time it was live. I was watching Formula One every time it was live. I was watching the Australian V8 supercars every time it was live. And, I was just getting nothing done at all. So for me, I thought, okay, this is crazy. I need to whittle it down to like one thing, because, otherwise I was just feeling pretty lazy. So anyway, I just decided it was going to become Formula One, and that's my thing. But I love the NASCAR too. And I watched it heavy duty for a while. So I had Sports Channel here in Australia where you could watch all the different parts of the upcoming NASCAR race live, just what Andrew's talking about with the Formula One, where you can watch the practicing, you can watch the qualifying. And I was really trying to learn the nuances of NASCAR, and it's completely different, but I feel like there's way more subtleties in the oval racing, because there's the slipstreaming and there's so much strategy involved, So I was really enjoying it, but I had to choose one for my sanity. So there it is.
You chose a good one, man. As a kid, I used to go to Long Beach Grand Prix with a couple of my friends and their dad. And I can remember being in the pit and watching them do their burnout coming out of the pit. Positive traction, just two big, wide, black rubber strips coming out of there every time. Smell of the rubber, the sound of the roar of the engine. Priceless.
Yeah.
It is.
I just had to take an opportunity to give Ben Coombs especially a bit of a shot across the bow, because we all know that Ben Coombs, Hoss, is a NASCAR nut. So
that's right.
Yeah. You're not going to miss an opportunity to give a NASCAR guy a bit of grief when you can.
There's so many. I'm not going to say. I'm going to keep out of it. But
Talking about NASCAR, so we might as well stay on the subject. You shared this with me, so I'm going to throw it up on the screen. It's probably a good opportunity for you to tell us about what's going on here, bro.
Cool. Very.
Yeah. So last year I was performing at one of the special events at the lady that was looking after us was really sweet. And she said, look, I can probably rustle up some paddock passes, which is where all the teams and the drivers kind of hang out. It's like their special little spot that very few people get access to. And she said, if I can get you like a pass for a couple of hours, would you take it? And what sort of a question is that to a racing fan? So given that it was the following day, I thought to myself, hang on a minute. I've actually got a Strat body that's painted with the actual Ferrari red paint that we sourced from Ferrari Melbourne. They were kind enough to give us their paint codes and everything. for their V8 cars. And so I had this guitar already painted. And so I took it along with me like a 10-year-old, with, you know, bringing in a bunch of things to be signed, and in a shopping bag, just hoping that I would have an opportunity to bump into one of the Ferrari drivers. And as it turned out, I did. And the driver you're looking at there is Charles Leclerc. And he was sitting at a table signing a bunch of stuff as we happened to be walking past. And, you know, we were getting brought through in a tour group, you know, with a guide. And, you know, of course, you're not supposed to bother any of the drivers and the team principals and all of that. But I said to them, "Oh, there he is. Can I go and get him to, you know, sign my guitar?" And the team group leader was like, no, you can't separate from the group. And plus he's, you know, he doesn't be bothered right now. And but then when they said, "What is it that you've got that you want to get signed?" And so I pulled the guitar out, and they said, "That's too perfect. You've got to go up." So I went up, and he was really friendly and super nice. And he signed my guitar, which now is an ornament in my recording studio. So it's wonderful. I mean, I could build a guitar, but I wouldn't want to ruin his signature on there. But that was heaps of fun, and that's really outstanding. Yeah, really cool, because it's very, very rare that you actually get to meet the drivers, other than, you know, like a fan signing or one of those kind of organized things where it's pretty wham bam and they shuffle you through super fast. But he was just sitting in his own hospitality area, just relaxing, signing some postcards and stuff. And so it was obviously meant to be, because I had the red Ferrari guitar, bumped into a red Ferrari driver. So
that's so cool. That is so cool. What a nice thing. I wouldn't put a neck on it either, Simon. I'd hang that thing up. I'd hang it up too. I've thought about, you know,
that's what it is. So
I thought about the Hot for Teacher guitar that Neil built with me. It's got Lori Tucker's signature on the headstock. And I thought about taking the neck and putting it,
which is awesome,
and actually hanging it. You know, it's not going to happen anytime soon, but maybe someday. Maybe we'll see. Really cool guitar, though. Thank you, Neil. By the way, God, it's a great guitar, Simon. Super cool, bro.
Oh, I bet.
Super cool.
Well, you know, there's still plans for me to get over to the States, Charles. Like, it'll either be, I'd say, much later this year or early next year, with the Van Halen thing. So when we catch up, brother, I would love to see that thing in the flesh.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
It is definitely going to happen. So yeah.
We've got a lot of music playing. I know you guys are wide on the COVID thing. Now, is the COVID thing still a thing, guys? Still in issues?
Unfortunately, it is down here. In fact, I just learned only an hour ago that both my parents have just got COVID. So yeah, it's obviously still a thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So
it's not like it was, but sorry. I was just saying that COVID's definitely still a thing down here, because just an hour ago I learned both my parents have got COVID. So
no kidding. See, I didn't hear you say that originally. I'm so sorry I didn't hear that.
Definitely still.
Wow.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. But it's
so you guys are. So it's not slowing you guys down as far as getting out socially as much, or are you guys having to mask up? Obviously, right? That's a norm still.
No, the masks are not really a norm anymore. People can sort of go about their business, and in supermarkets and whatever, it's you don't have to wear masks. But it's definitely they're talking about some kind of, like, it's a new strain. And to be honest, I thought maybe it was just the news. Fear mongering is normal, all of that stuff that they do.
Sure.
But so this is the first time I've actually known anyone that's got it recently. So yeah.
I hope your parents are okay, brother. I hope everything goes okay over there. I hate hearing that. It's interesting, it didn't get real until it touched, my personal family's life. And everyone has their own COVID story. But right now, the U.S. is wide open. Shows are playing constantly. We're going to families going to see Guns N' Roses in a couple of months. Still making plans to see Wolfgang on his tour. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I will not miss this tour. I don't care what happens. We're not going to miss it.
No way.
Yeah.
And they'd be coming through North Carolina, right?
No, that's the weird thing. They're not. They're coming. They're 2 states away. A couple of states away. I'd have to travel.
Okay.
I forget exactly where it was now. But they're not coming to North Carolina. They're not coming. I don't think they're even coming to South Carolina. But it's a must-see show. A must-see concert.
So, absolutely. So how would you, given that it's 2 states away, how would you travel? Would you fly to it or do something else?
No. Ironically enough, Brendan B. Squared. Oh, wait. Here we go. That guy right there. Love you, Brendan. He offered me and Tony to stay over at his house and up there near Poughkeepsie, when Wolfgang plays up there. So that may still happen. That may still happen. And that
would be super cool.
Brennan. Yeah, that would be really great. So that's kind of where things were at last time I visited this. Yeah, lots of shows are playing right now. And just to make another quick point, Simon, the video that you just dropped on the F1, you literally are playing a guitar to a car that is traveling at what's the top speed of that car? It's in excess of 200 miles an hour. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. The top speed, I mean, it changes a little bit depending on which circuit they're at, in which city. But in Melbourne, it's over 200 miles an hour, which is like 320 kilometers. Yeah.
And then when they come to these tight S turns, they slow down dramatically and they pull them in on your guitar work with your band. Man, you guys, you imitate a car traveling 200 miles an hour, slowing down and taking the turns musically and then speeding back up in time. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I had to shout out for that, bro. That's just really cool. Super.
Thank you, Charles. Yeah, that was an idea I had, and I didn't even really know how possible it was going to be, because what I wanted to do was take the engine note of the car as it does a lap of Albert Park, but then also, catch the braking and when it shifts all the gears. And I thought, I wonder if I can make a rock track, an instrumental thing to that, where all the chords are changing on all the gear shifts exactly, and then the engine note of the car would be, of course, like sort of the main melody note on the guitar. Mm-hmm. And so I had to fool around with it for a little bit, of course, to find the right tempo so that it kind of fit. And eventually I did, and it worked out as a great tempo because it's one of those classic, what I would call like a rock driving tempo, Yeah. So I would say like the feel of, say, Satriani surfing with the Alien, the doom, and it ended up being about that kind of, that tempo where it just feels great to get in the car and you're slapping the steering wheel and it's like a driving song. And it turned out just by accident that I could make it work at that,
I used to do that to Iron Maiden back in the 80s, brother. That's all I'm saying. Very cool.
And you got to did you have a particular song you loved driving to in the 80s to Iron Maiden?
Number of the Beast. Number of the Beast was the very beginning. That was my beginning song. And then 2 Minutes to Midnight, all-time favorite driving song.
2 minutes.
All-time,
2 Minutes to Midnight is killer as well. Yeah. Well, actually, the F1 thing that you saw that I did, that's actually pretty close to the tempo of Number of the Beast. So there you go.
Love it.
But
love it.
But yeah, that was but that was really fun to put together, and it was sort of one of those cerebral exercises that I didn't know would work musically, but as it turned out, it came together pretty well, actually. So yeah, thank you for that, Charles.
It is outstanding, Simon. Absolutely outstanding. I got a guitar I want to show you guys. Let me know when I can show it to you. It's Neil Daly has sent me a guitar. You guys know I love relic guitars. I've gotten 3 guitars from Neil in the last year and a half. Started out with a Frankie. Got a Frankie that is the sister model to Fruitcake Tony's Frankie. Very, very nice build. Then I got the Hot for Teacher. I got a Chris Lock body, and got another beautiful relic guitar. Beautiful relic guitar. Got a Lori Tucker signature. Thank you, Lori, by the way. Love you. And so then
Everyone loves Lori.
Yes, we do. And so I haven't ever got a Wolfgang yet. I've never owned one. Played a few. Wanted one. And so I contacted Chris Lock, got a neck and a body, a Wolfgang PV. It's a PV style. It's in the style of PV. It's a tribute. The guitar is going to be a tribute. It is a tribute. I'm not completely done building it yet. I'm waiting on the pickups. They're ordered. And so I got with Neil on this guitar, and what kind of relic distressed body do I want to have done? Because I love relic guitars. You guys know me. I really have a thing for relic guitars. I think they have a lot of character. I love the two-toneness of it.
Yeah.
And contrast wood, and then the paint that used to be there. And so I said, Neil, what do you think about a bumblebee? Because I've always wanted a bumblebee. I said, on a Wolfgang body with a really heavy relic. And he was like, oh man, I'd love to do that. And that's what I like about Neil. If you'll give him the opportunity to show his ability to give you what he does good, and he is, I've never seen better relic or stripe work on guitars anywhere. It's really good work. He's super clean. That is his forte. And so I said to him, well, I had a couple ideas for this guitar. And I started running them by him. He immediately got on board. And he'll tell me if an idea that I have for something is like lame. He'll tell me, he'll say, maybe not so much. But we work well together. I've had nothing but great experiences with Neil Daly as far as the end result of what he does. And I'm always proud to show his work off. But let me grab a guitar real quick. I'll be right back, you guys.
Please do. Okay, sure.
Fantastic.
Hey, Andrew, am I glitching a little bit for you guys, or am I okay?
You're glitching a bit, but it's nothing bad. It's nothing bad, bro. It's nothing bad, if you understand what I mean.
Okay. I can probably fix that if you'll give me 20 seconds. So
okay, we'll give you 20 seconds.
I thought it might have been great.
Yep, we'll give Hoss 20 seconds.
Sort this out.
And then we'll get Charles to talk about his guitar while you're fixing it.
Okay. Yeah, shouldn't take long. I'm just going to reset something that could be the issue. So my apologies.
You're fine, brother.
Yeah, bang.
So do you want to talk about your guitar, Charles?
Oh, you ready?
That?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I asked him for a full relic bumblebee on a Chris Lock body and neck. Took him about 32 days to get this back to me. And I apologize, it's not totally finished. Check this out.
Wow. Wow. Not bad at all.
No, it looks like it's 40 years old, like it's been played every single show by Eddie for 40 years, although there'd be wood missing in other places because I think he'd have beat the guitar even worse than this. Check this out.
Look at the belt rash. The belt rash is fantastic.
Right there. So this is an FU2 Floyd with an FU2 trim stop. They greatly improve fixed trim stability. Even if your Floyd is right down on the body, if you'll add one, it makes a difference. This is a Chris Lock neck It's been see the headstock. Check the headstock out, guys.
Oh yeah.
That's all custom work, and I want to show you guys something. Look real close. If you can see it, tell me when you can see it. He added spiders, black widow spiders.
Yeah.
To the guitar.
Oh yeah. Okay, I see.
Do you see him on the headstock?
Yeah.
Yep, sure do. That's cool.
And he added them to the body. Now you notice it has spider webs. The Bumblebee has spider webs. You see them? The real one has 2 on the front and back. I'm sorry, 2 on the front, and the back doesn't have any on the original Bumblebee.
Right.
But I told him I wanted spiders on the spider webs. So there's a couple there.
Yeah.
And then there's one up at the top. And then on the back, he added a spider web. And I don't know if you can see all the spiders, but there's about 6 to 8 all over the back of the body.
Yeah, we can see him.
Wow.
And so
that is super cool.
This is as custom, one of a kind as it gets. It's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
I've got EVH Wolfgang pickups coming. Obviously, got to plug it in, so I'm going to add that. And then the 3-way switch. Other than that, it's ready to go. Locking tuners, compensated, and and a detuner.
Yeah.
So I want to thank Neil for making me happy once again. I want to thank Chris Locke for building really great bodies and necks. And I can't wait to finish this, and I'll show you guys it when it gets all finished.
Thank you.
Awesome. That looks so cool.
Can you see the chat, Hoss?
The private chat or the main chat?
The main chat.
Yes, I can.
Do you want to go through and say hi? We've got 10 people watching, so if you want to say hi, that'll be great.
I certainly do. Why not? So we've got Ben Coombs. Hey Ben, how you doing? And we've got my bald brother from another mother, Adam Roach, because God could only make a few perfect heads, so on the rest he put hair. And we got another Melbourne brother here, John ZD351 in the house. Quentin James.
Quentin.
We got Sandra. How you doing, Sandra? Christopher Live Sauer is in the chat. Tim Thomas, Charles 75N, and Holly Lewis, of course, the one and only.
Sweetheart, love you, sweetheart.
Thank you so much, everyone, for jumping in live. Obviously, live is always the most fun way to go, for us as well. So, yeah, beautiful.
Very cool. Very cool. It's good to see you guys.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I suppose what we should do, if anybody's watching on replay and wants to know what the story is, how Hoss and I met Charles, I suppose this is probably the best time to talk about it through another great channel that we support, Hoss, Fruitcake Tony's channel. So So we want to do a shout out to the Fruitcake Tony guys and girls over there. Thank you guys, and it's a great opportunity for us to get Charles on here during his time off to talk guitars and talk about some of your stories that you've experienced in the past, Charles.
Cool. Hey, I hope I hope Tony, I haven't heard much lately, but I hope he's healing well from his surgery. I wish him the best. Just want to say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's got a lot of concerts he needs to be going to.
That's right. Yeah, sending love and hugs, Tony.
Absolutely. I was anticipating when I was coming on here, this is a lot of the same suspects in the chat. A lot of these channels overlap, but you guys are on the other side of the world and you've got subscribers to your channel I've never heard of, probably never even seen, unless I've maybe been in a chat with them or not. But I guess what I'll do is I'll do a little recap on the way I got into the club in the 80s. And then if you don't mind, I'll maybe tell you a story or two. That'd be okay.
That'd be definitely okay with me. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So about 1981 or 1980, the middle of 1980, I was on my way to a recruiting office with a friend of mine trying to talk him out of joining the Air Force. And so we're rolling up the road in his truck, and it was kind of early in the morning. And we noticed that coming the other direction was another friend of ours in his truck. And his name was Jeff. I was with Dave in his truck, and Jeff was coming this way. And we see each other, and we wave each other down. We stop. I get out, and I meet Jeff halfway in the middle of the street. He says, "Hey, man," he says, "I met this guy, and he runs a security company, and they do concerts in clubs in different venues in LA. He said, we got a show tonight that he's asked me to come with, and he said he wanted me to bring a buddy. If I had a big buddy I could bring along at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood." And so I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm there." And I literally turned around to Dave. I said, "Bro, look, don't join the Air Force. You're on your own." And I jumped in Jeff's truck and took off back to my house. And he didn't join the Air Force, you guys. He decided not to get in. But it would not have been the best thing for him at the time. But about 5 hours later, I'm standing in front of Ann and Nancy Wilson's dressing room door backstage at the Whiskey. And so at that moment in time, it was a whole new deal for me. I had never been in that environment in that way before. I'd been to the clubs a couple of times. I've been to some concerts by that time. I've been to a lot of concerts by that time. But as far as being in the clubs and working in Hollywood, it was a whole new bag, completely new deal. And so after that initial show started, I continued working. I was very interested in it. It was the most fun I ever had, most fun job I've ever had. Also the most dangerous and violent job I ever had, give and take. However, I had a propensity for it. I got along with the people I worked with. Turned out I had no idea, at the time that the owner of the Whiskey owned the Rainbow and the Roxy.
Right.
A guy by the name of Mario Maglione and another guy by the name of Lou Adler. And I got friendly with Louis, Mario's nephew. He was the bartender and really sort of a ghost manager. He oversaw the club beyond the manager who was managing the club at the time. And they'd go through managers every 6 to 8 months. At that time, they were going through managers. I went through 3 in the time I was there.
Right.
But I made a lot of friends, and I was really into the lifestyle. It was the opposite of what I was doing before. And I really enjoyed being, up all night and sleeping all day. Basically what I did.
Yeah.
And when I got into the club, the interesting thing I noticed about the Whiskey is that, as music changed over the years, the club had to morph into something else to accommodate the music. The club doesn't drive the music. Musicians drive the music, and the clubs adapt to it. And so you're coming out of the go-go era of the 60s at the Whiskey. They opened in 64.
Right.
And that would be what I would call the sort of the Johnny Rivers era. Go-go dancers at the club at that time. There were 3 cages, one on the right, left side of the stage. And then they added a third one on the second level. If you're up at the upstairs bar, there's a little jetty that shot out, and there was another cage there.
Right.
And that was sort of it was a classy place. It wasn't a dive. It wasn't a dump in any way, shape, or form. It was very edgy, very edgy. It was Hollywood. I mean, what else, But as the 60s started to change musically, bands like The Doors came onto the scene. And I remember Mario, he was having a conversation with Louis and Randy, one of the other bouncers one time. and I was just kind of just hanging out. I wasn't really involved in it, but I'll never forget what he said. He said, you know, when I was the doorman back in the 60s, because even though he was the original doorman, you came to the Whiskey A Go-Go in 1967, you saw Mario at the door. And if you asked him, hey, Mario, what's going on? He'd say SOS. Same old, okay, that was his standard answer. And as the Doors sort of became, the Doors became the house band, just like Motley Crue did.
Yeah, right.
For several
I didn't
years.
know. I didn't know Motley Crue were a house band there. Is that really?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you about that in a little bit.
Okay.
And so the Doors are there, and when I say they're house band, the Doors are opening. In those days in the 60s, you would see like Steve McQueen would be in the club sitting in one of the back booths with a bunch of other actors. It was the golden age of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And you would see Andy Warhol or Timothy Leary or Mama Cass Elliott, you know, Mamas and Papas. You'd be there in the club. There was a regular fixture. And some of the best memories I have of Mario were telling stories about those people. So you've literally got the door, for example, or you could see Jim Morrison and Van Morrison together on stage at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Okay. And that's but the interesting thing that he was talking about, and this I will never forget, you guys, and this is the impact that the music had on life. In the 60s, when the club originally opened, the Go-Go Girls danced a certain way. There was a specific type of way they danced to the music, the tempo. But Mario, who loved the Doors, he loved them. He called it carnival music. That's exactly what he called it. Carnival music. That's what he said. And he says, I like it. I like that carnival music.
That's really, really interesting. I can see that he would have had that impression maybe because of the organ that was all through the Doors.
Ray Manzarek, absolutely. Hammond B3.
Yeah.
And And so the girls had to enter the psychedelic age. They still had the Go-Go Girls. They were crossing the genres. And so the psychedelic age had come in, and the girls changed the way they danced. And instead of moving, they started slowing down and making their moves more psychedelic. And it completely changed the way the club ran. It changed the way the girls danced. It changed, music changed everything in the club. Yeah. And their sole purpose, the Doors' sole purpose in life in those days, was to try to blow the other bands off the stage.
Yeah.
That's actually a Ray Manzarek quote. One time, I get a knock at the back door. This was maybe the first 4 months I'd worked there. I open the door, and Robbie Krieger is standing there with this goofy look on his face and holding a guitar. And I said, dude, aren't you Robbie Krieger? Hey, well, yes, I am. He says, he smiles, he shakes my hand. I said, dude, okay, cool. Come on in. What are you doing? Right. He goes, I'm going to sit in with my brother. He had not his literal brother, but a good friend of his. He called him his brother, though.
So sorry, Charles, when would that be roughly? What year was that?
This was 1980, the end of 1980.
No, end of 1980, yeah.
1980. And so he came in and he sat down with another band, and he sat in for the whole set. A lot of the funny thing about it is I knew who they were. I appreciated the Doors. They weren't really my era. They were my brother's era. My brother's 10 or so years older than me. That was his era of music. I was exposed to it big time. I was listening to Deep Purple in 1972 when I was 11, 12 years old because of my brother, right? And so I thoroughly appreciated it. And I was fanboying Robbie a little bit. Not like when I saw Ozzy, but pretty much. I thought it was really cool. But it's funny how a lot of the people didn't know who he was. They didn't realize that the guitar player from the Doors was literally standing on stage. it was a big deal. I mean, a huge deal.
Yeah.
But I recognized it. I realized who it was, and I just, I just loved it. I got a kick out of it. That's one of the greatest things that I got out of working at that place, was the diversity of the music that I got to listen to. It was crazy.
Sure.
It was crazy because the Whiskey A Go-Go was the platform, the single biggest platform in Los Angeles at that time for music in general. I don't care if it was, what's going on? Fran.
Hey, Fran.
Somebody new. It's nice to see you, Fran. Welcome. They're not new to you, though, is it? New to me, guys. New to me. It's good to see you. Hey, Symmetry. Right on, Trevor. Right on, brother. So as things transpired, and so now we're in the age of, with the club, we're talking about Crew, Rat.
Yep.
Even though Don Dokken was on the Strip and he was in a band, Dokken still hadn't quite made it yet. It's still, it was 83.
I understand.
Not quite. They were still a thing. And interesting enough, I remember seeing Don. He came backstage a lot. I saw Don Dokken all the time. And they actually went and they did a tour. They did a European tour. It was a small European tour, but it was the first time they went to Europe. And George Lynch, Pilsen were not even in the band yet. This was pre them. And he came back. He was talking about it backstage. I didn't know anything, but I loved Don. I loved him before he was a class act, before he was a major rock star. And I one of my fondest memories of being in that place was talking with guys like Don Dokken. But interesting enough, so we're early 80s. We're in the era of Motley Crue and Rat.
Hey, so sorry, Charles, to interrupt. You were saying
ahead.
Motley Crue for a time at the Whiskey were a house band. Would that have been? I'm guessing that's before they even recorded their first album. Would that be right?
Oh yeah. And during that,
during.
Yeah. Well, Too Fast for Love.
Because what year was that record?
That came out in 81. The original pressing. 81. The exact month I don't remember, but it was the end of 81. It would have been like October. Forgive me for not knowing the exact date. You think I would know that? The original pressing. I'm talking about the very first leather record pressing. 81, probably October, maybe November. And I was fortunate enough to receive a copy of that, the 5th copy out of the first box. I've been offered a lot of money for that album.
I bet.
It's a really nice piece of memorabilia. I will not sell it ever. And I got the boys to sign it. The 5th album that they signed.
Yep.
Interesting fact about Alan Kaufman. Alan Kaufman was their original manager. It's interesting the way he came into their lives. I'll tell a little Motley Crue story right now. This is you'll get a kick out of this if you're a Motley Crue fan.
Oh, I am.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I grew up with all the early records. I didn't come in with the kids,
Well, their original in the original days, their original songs were so powerful and so good. The recordings here now, and you can hear the recordings. You can get back and get a lot of audio and even some video, mostly audio though, of the 81, 82 era into 83.
Yeah.
But the early 81, their set list was just so good. It was so good. Every song was catchy. They all had a hook.
Yeah.
They were fantastic songs. And interesting enough, Alan Kaufman. I don't speak enough about Alan on the shows I talk about him. They owe an incredible debt to Alan. It was very interesting. What he did for them was he funded them in massive ways. And I mean, what I mean is this: he would get a venue. He would pay for the venue to get them out of LA. to give them exposure. And he'd pick these little small 350, 400 person clubs. He'd rent them, do all of the promo, and they'd fill that club. And he did it over and over again, primarily in 1981. And I remember one time, Motley Crue, okay, I'm going to quote, this is exactly what he said. I haven't heard this before, but you guys may have. They played at the speed of Coke. Okay. That was their timing. That is exactly what he said. And he was kind of mocking them a little bit. He did not like the drug aspect of rock and roll. I could tell you stories of having to pull him off of guys who came into their dressing room, or he saw them in the hallway and they were trying to give the guys, dope. Okay. He had their best interest at hand. Absolutely did. And he's family. Now, Mick Mars and Alan Kaufman are cousins by marriage. Okay?
All right.
They were, absolutely. And Stick and Barry, their roadies, the original roadies, that Barry is Mick Mars' cousin. So it was a family operation. And there was a lot of camaraderie there all through 1981. And I was really surprised when it all fell apart. I really, really was surprised. And I remember, back to the whole speed of Coke thing, there was a sort of a driving desire to play louder and faster. Okay. Speed metal, which ended up, I guess, transforming into thrash metal, bands like Motorhead. Okay.
They
crossed multiple genres. They were not only a rock and roll band, because Lemmy said so. So that makes it so. Speed metal band, a thrash metal band, and they also appealed to the entire punk genre. So you would see all those people at the shows. They tended to be a little bit rough. You'd see there'd be fights. There would always be a little bit of this and that. But the shows were so good, it was totally worth it, But this is what Alan says to Alan, getting back to Motley Crue. This is what he says, and this was at a rehearsal for a 3-night sold-out show at the Whiskey A Go-Go at the end of 1981. I'll never forget this shit. I'm glad I can share this with you guys. He's standing with all the boys, and he says, "Listen, guys. This is what I want you to try to do. If you guys would just slow down a little bit, you'll sound heavier. People will hear all the notes. Vince will have time to breathe. And you guys will sound tighter and better." They didn't receive it at first for nothing. Nothing. The look on Nikki's face was priceless. It was priceless, you guys. But Alan was absolutely right. Okay. And he didn't let up. And he made them literally try at sound check to slow this down a little bit, just a little bit. And then it took him a moment, Simon, it took him a moment to get it all tight again. But I promise you, that was the definitive show, the moment that Motley Crue kicked it up a level.
And probably almost crystallized them as the Motley Crue that we know, right?
Exactly. And I credit Alan Kaufman and his wife, because it was Kaufman and Kaufman. Him and his wife were a managerial team. They're actually real estate moguls, was what their actual thing was. And his hobby was a rock band called Motley Crue. He literally showed up at a show one time and loved the band so much that he wanted to help them and back them, obviously for a profit, but he was interested in backing the band. He was that big a fan. I remember the first time, I've told this story before, but I remember the first time I heard Motley Crue, I was blown away. I mean, I was blown away. I'd heard 100 bands live in the clubs. I heard good bands. I heard tight bands. I heard bands that I was like, hey, that's a great moment. I'd hear a great lead solo. I'd hear a couple of good songs here and there. But for a band to come out of the gate and they grabbed my attention. When I walked Motley Crue to the stage the first time, I turned around and went right backstage and walked up those stairs. I thought they looked really badass. The first time I walked into their dressing room, I remember being a little shocked because I hadn't seen any guys in any band who had that kind of vibe. They were intense. They were a serious looking bunch of guys. You didn't know what to make of them. High heels.
I can imagine as a group, they seemed really cohesive, right?
Those guys, look, their lives were in shambles until they did one thing, hit that stage. And they were a tight.
And then it came together. Yeah.
Every time, every single time. He tells those guys to slow the heck down and to think a little more about the notes they're hitting. My best Motley Crue moment, most memorable moment of a change in that band for the absolute best. Very proud I was there for that moment. But at the same time now, these guys are the house band. Okay, that means that they have taken over where Snow left off. Because Snow is the band who opened for Van Halen in '78.
Yeah.
If you were made it to where you were called the house band for Whiskey A Go Go, there was a real serious chance that you were going to have some success in your musical career.
Get some attention. Hey, Charles, let me ask you this. So what does that, being the house band back then, actually mean? So, like, did that mean that they played a residency, like multiple nights per week, or like what did that mean exactly?
Oh, that means that they were a regular on the bill. They would show up. You would see Motley Crue once a month. Okay. They didn't have to pay to play there. Okay.
So they had, because most bands did, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they were. It puts you into a different level. I guess you would call it a different position as a musician in that club.
Yeah.
But Snow.
Hey, Charles, can you maybe set me right on something? And definitely for anyone watching this, and especially people that didn't grow up in a band scene in the States, because the pay to play thing didn't never exist in Australia, right? So maybe you could just spend a minute just explaining how that worked. And correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially with pay to play, the band would pay upfront a fee, whatever the club wanted, and in return for that, they would get a bunch of tickets. But the onus was on the band to sell those tickets themselves. Is that pretty much the? Is that the gist of it?
That's exactly it. You just summed it up.
Okay, great.
It varied a little bit depending on the band. Obviously, if you're a brand new band and you want to play the club, pay to play was great for a band who wanted to get exposure. It sort of opened the door from the other side and gave the band the ability to make something happen, as opposed to waiting for something to happen.
Yeah,
you could, but Motley Crue, they didn't need to do that. They didn't need to do that at all. The fans would hit that doorway and they would fill that thing up, and they had to literally start playing 3 nights in a row, 2 shows on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and they wouldn't play 2 on Sunday. They would play 1, not because they couldn't sell both. And Sunday would be the biggest show, you guys. You would think that they would have gone through everybody's money for all the regulars, and then on Sunday it would be kind of a lesser, kind of a bone crowd.
Yeah.
No. The weekend got better and better as the day went, and Sunday was an extravaganza.
Wow, that's cool.
Best after parties for Motley Crue were on a Sunday night.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Because I guess they were finished their 3 shows, right? So they could, not that I imagine they didn't party somewhat after the Friday and Saturday shows, but I can imagine after the Sunday, it's all on,
I told that story about, so Snow was the house band. Snow's guitar player was Carlos Cavazo. Obviously, he went somewhere out of Snow. He was the shining star in that band. I've heard on more than one occasion members of other bands talking about the band Snow backstage. and being very critical. You know how it can get.
Yeah.
And them just simply saying Carlos is awesome, but they would replace everybody else. And it was really obvious. He was a shining star. I don't know how else to say it. Super nice guy. His girlfriend once punched me, almost knocked me out. I think I told that story. Yeah,
I think I've heard that story.
Yeah. He was dating one of the roadies, Ross, one of the roadies for Snow, his sister, and she was really drunk, and I wouldn't let her backstage because she was causing havoc backstage, and she took a swing at me and quite literally almost knocked me out. The memories, guys. Jeez. And but Carlos, man, he obviously morphed into other things. I remember the night that Kevin Dubrow showed up at the club, and he had a record company guy with him, a suit. And right after Snow's set, they went into that dressing room and they came out and they went to that back hallway. They were back there for a few minutes, and when they came back, Snow was history. Quiet Riot was a thing. Period. Period. And oh God, I'm sorry. I got lost, you guys.
That's okay.
I forgot what I was talking about. I hate when I do that, you guys. I was talking about Carlos in the club.
Before we were talking about Carlos, we were talking about the pay-to-play thing and the Motley with the house band. Yeah.
Thank you. And so for bands like Motley Crue, it was real simple for them to just come in there and just knock it out of the park over and over.
Yeah.
It's part of the turmoil. That's part of the problem that was happening.
Right.
They were selling everything out.
Mm-hmm.
And the company, Alan's company, Greene World was the name of the company. They were making a lot of money.
Right.
So they created a lot of tension. And the boys started getting
that's one of the key things that we forget sometimes about rock and roll, isn't it, Hoss? That it's a business, certainly foremost, and you've got to get caught in that machine. And management is a big part of that music business. Yeah. Look, I love talking about Motley Crue too. I love listening to Motley Crue, and I just want to put a plug in for their book here, The Dirt. If you guys haven't read this biography by Motley Crue, it's phenomenal.
It's great. It is. Yeah,
it's one of the best biographies I've ever. It's a scary biography, Hoss and Charles, because
it's not for the faint of heart. It's pretty candid, which is great. Which is what you would want from Motley Crue. I want the warts and all. Yeah, you want everything.
I'll say this: that's what I want from any author who's going to write a book about anybody. I want to hear it for real, and that goes across the board.
It's the band themselves sharing, so it's not an author's interpretation of what happened, which is always good, from a historical point of view to have that kind of stuff. But the good thing about these guys is they've put it together. But one thing, though, that united them, Hoss and Charles, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, Hoss, was the music.
Yeah.
They were deadly serious, mate. Mick Mars, especially, we cannot underestimate Mick Mars's influence on that band.
Never. And I will go toe to toe with anyone that talks shit about Mick Mars to me, whether it's a guitar student of mine or whoever else, because I got to say, where his power is those incredible riffs, his sound, which is unique. I mean, it's very hard in the era of, say, the 70s, onwards, for an electric guitarist that essentially we're all using variations of the same equipment. It's just Marshalls and guitars with pickups, right? But Mick always had his own identifiable sound. You could hear Mick in 2 seconds. Actually, you could probably hear it even less than that. But no one sounded like Mick. And, if for anyone that might be watching this, they'd be like, okay, so what would be name me one cool Mick Mars thing that I should listen to first for you to change my mind. I would say listen to, for example, his slide solo on Bad Boy Boogie off the Girls, Girls, Girls record. That slide solo is as good as any blues rock slide solo I've ever heard.
Yep. He's a blues man.
Agreed.
He's a blues man, Hoss.
He was that's right. And that's why, you've got Nicky writing the bulk of the songs. Would that be fair to say, Charles? That's how I understand it, is Nicky was the main writer?
That's
And then you've
exactly
got,
right. And
yeah.
he had, before, when the band formed, when he was in London, he already had about 10 to 12 awesome, all those great songs that they start out with. He had the format for all those songs before the band actually formed. So within 3 months of the band forming, they had
boom,
club songs
boom.
to roll.
Yeah, no doubt. So you've got that. Then you've got the tone of Vince's voice, and then you've got the aggression and that really bitey, awesome guitar tone of Mick Mars, and him just playing the blues. And the thing is, and as you were talking about earlier, Charles, about how they started off almost kind of going into that kind of punky speed metal thing, and you can hear some of that on the first record really clearly. Even
Yes.
though by the time they recorded that album, I bet Alan had already dialed the tempos back a bit, right? So,
He did.
But I could only imagine how frantic and frenetic it was before that happened. But having Mick Mars as basically a blues guitarist, but adding to that, I mean, if they were all speed metal guys, it wouldn't have worked. But you've got all these different influences, and that's why, like with any of our favorite bands, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and it's the alchemy of the four guys that made it what it is. And it's like what you were saying, Charles. You know, you'd see them backstage, like walking up the whiskey stairs or something, and you could tell there was an energy coming off them as a group, like that. You know, one was a triangle, one was a square, one was a star, but they all fit together to make one picture. You know.
Yes. That's exactly.
I remember when Shout at the Devil came out, and I hadn't heard it. I hadn't seen it. I had heard of Motley Crue. I was a young guy. And I remember this guy called Garth Blomfield. He came to school with the cassette tape Hoss and Charles, and you know, Shout at the Devil. And you know, I just want to. There's a picture there of Mick Mars with the Hold on. Where am I? Can
you got it. There it is. Yeah, there you
Mick
got
Mars
it. Yeah,
with the dark eyeliner on. And
those are very early photos, Andrew.
And I remember my friends, because I went to a Catholic high school, and we were listening to like Led Zeppelin and all this kind of stuff anyway. So and it's like Shout at the Devil. It was edgy, man. This was like dangerous stuff. It was dangerous rock and roll, bro.
Yeah. That was my impression too, Andrew. I was hanging out with a crew in high school, and I remember when I got my hands on that particular album, and it had the black cover with the slightly gloss black embossed sort of, pentagram. And we thought that was the baddest, coolest stuff ever. And we used to do all this crazy stuff that used to scare the bejesus out of us. We used to turn the lights out and you remember, the start of that track, how it's got like that distorted monologue, like all that stuff.
Yeah. Excellent.
We used to light red candles around the pentagram of the album and put it on and turn the lights out, and then there would be that weird devilly abyss kind of monologue in the beginning, and we would scare the crap out of each other with that. But it's funny because but now that I'm older, I realize that if you really look at the lyrics, it's not about devil worship at all. No. It's about saying to shout at the devil, not with the devil. Yeah,
that is absolutely true, and it is actually based on Aleister Crowley and Lovecraft.
Right.
Those are the
Lovecraft.
two influences on the song. Yeah.
And is that where that opening monologue comes from? Is that Lovecraft?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where he's saying, in the beginning, God created the seas, and it's got all that stuff?
I believe so, yes.
Really cool. I mean, that's one of the scariest intros to what I would have called back then when I was 13, a heavy metal record. That I was like, oh, this is so scary. That's right.
So what's really interesting about that is that it wasn't long after that we were listening to it, and we had... some of my friends had older brothers and sisters, and they were filtering information down to us, making connections with H.P. Lovecraft and all that. We were interested at that same time. We were listening to, obviously, Led Zeppelin and making the connections with Lord of the Rings, which was required reading at high school, which was great. And then all of a sudden, Led Zeppelin are talking about figures in Lord of the Rings. So then we went back and started reading all this other stuff, which opened up to Edgar Allan Poe and all. So,
right.
Yeah. So you got to stand back 40 years later and go, shit, these guys were onto it, man. They
were onto it.
Yeah. They were reading about literature and reading literature and singing songs about it and incorporating that, but not taking it seriously. Charles and Hoss, you know what I mean? They weren't taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. They, they were wild. Okay. I can say that with no reservation. Nicky used to get in fights all the time, and he always got his butt kicked. Okay,
Christopher. Yeah,
but he was consistent. I got to give him that. And
okay, so
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask. So I'm gathering that Nicky was a good fighter, right? Like he was the one doing the ass kicking, not the other way around, mostly.
Well, the thing about it is if you're going to dress like Motley Crue,
you're going to cop it, right?
Fully commit, you're going to take some flack. And I remember one time, the fire marshals used to show up about every month to 2 months. A couple of fire marshals would boom, boom, either knock on the back door, they'd come in the front door.
Yeah.
And I've seen a fire marshal and a deputy fire marshal come through the side door, walk to the top of my little landing where I worked and turn their heads and look at the stage while Motley Crue was on stage and look at each other and shake their heads and turn around and walk out.
Really?
Disgust. Yes. Because they didn't get it. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
And, but another, it's interesting, the whole shout at the devil time.
Hey, Neil.
You're also it's a heyday of Wasp. And part of that whole thing was not just to get attention. It was not just marketing and merchandising in a brilliant way. I remember, so there were other clubs that I used to go to in Hollywood. And the Crew and Rat, it's interesting. So the Crew was there and Rat and Crew both were chums. Brothers. Right. Zero drama between those two bands.
Okay.
I've seen them at after parties. Brothers, no drama of any kind. Is that because they sort of came up together in LA, or was it just because they respected each other once they met in the clubs? Motley Crue had already established themselves as a premium band with songs, and they were rolling and they were unstoppable. Motley Crue, and then Rat came up, and they were in a transition where they were still. I'll never forget the first time Robin played. What song was that? Give me a second. I want to get it right. You Think You're Tough. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's their first hit. Him and Steven wrote that song together. Rat's first hit was Stephen Pearcy and Robin Crosby's song. That's their first radio play. You Think You're Tough.
Right.
When those guys were coming into there, they didn't have the same quality of hits. They were still working on it. So there was a time lapse, about a year difference. Maybe even 16 months of difference.
Yeah, so Motley Crue were kind of already established. They were the band at the Whiskey, and Rat were kind of coming up and developing their songs.
Exactly, and they were going through massive members. I've seen Rat with.
Oh, I see.
I have seen them with multiple guitar players.
So it took Rat a long time to kind of settle on the lineup that we all know, right?
Yes, exactly. Multiple drummers, multiple bass players. Period. Right. The only constant was Stephen Pearcy. Mm-hmm. I've seen Rat completely dismantle from Mickey Rat to where it was nothing but Stephen. And then 2 weeks later, he put another band together.
Yep.
But him and Robin were friends. They knew each other for a very long time. These guys grew up in La Jolla, California. They're surfers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Robin was a half-ass. I'll tell you guys a surfing story. I surfed with Robin Crosby. I'll tell you a story.
Please do, because I wouldn't normally associate those kind of bands with being surfers, actually.
It's interesting. And Jakey Lee was an Army brat. And he
really?
They were buddies. So Warren DeMartini was the youngest. Me and Robin was older than me. Mm-hmm. But when Robin was in high school, Warren DeMartini was just getting into junior high. And there would
Right.
be parties. They would come to parties in La Jolla and the San Diego Beach area, and they would be a backyard party, and Rat would be there playing. It wasn't Rat; it was the bands they were in before.
Yeah.
And they all knew each other, and I mean they all
Sure.
did. They knew Jakey. Jake was in that mix back in the day, well before Hollywood ever was a thing.
Okay.
And I'll never forget another. So Motley Crue and Rat and Wasp are all kind of, this thing's transitioning.
Yeah.
But I saw a show at the Troubadour one time, and I got to share it with you. It's one of the craziest things you'd ever think of. So
please do.
The band Wasp united with the American Red Cross.
Yep.
And they did a blood drive. It was called the Heavy Metal Blood Drive.
That's
and
cool.
In front of the Troubadour, there was this banner that said, "We all need blood, and so does Wasp." That's straight up, right? And Wasp played this bill, and I get a load of this lineup: Witch, Overkill, the Stepmothers, Odin, Saint Valentine. Those are all local LA bands that played on this bill with Wasp. Now, Wasp was the headliner, obviously, but a lot of talent came out of those bands. Pardon me?
So Wasp were coming up roughly around the same time as Rat, would you say? Give or take a year or two?
A little bit behind Rat. Just a little bit.
So Rat a little bit behind Motley Crue, and Wasp were a little bit behind Rat.
Exactly.
I used to have some of those early Wasp records when I was a teenager on vinyl. Were the guys like Blackie Lawless and Chris Holmes, were they nice cats? What sort of guys were they?
Chris Holmes, I used to. Okay, so interesting enough, he ended up marrying Lita Ford.
Yeah, right.
I saw Chris Holmes and Lita Ford walking down Sunset Boulevard in 1981.
That would have been a sight.
They were not a thing in 1981.
Right.
It was kind of just crazy. I remember that. I used to see Lita all the time. I saw Chris all the time. I didn't see Blackie so much, but I saw him a few times.
Yeah.
I was really into Wasp. As far as not in the club performing, I saw them a few times. But they were the moral majority targeted them.
Oh, they got in a lot of trouble with the PMRC and when all of that was happening, right? But I imagine, and you would know this, but from their point of view, the band members, Blackie and Chris and everyone, they weren't trying to do any of that, right? Like, were they just normal, nice guys, or was there some intent kind of behind the?
Say that one more time, Simon. I lost you about halfway through, brother. I heard. Were they nice guys?
Yeah.
You're asking me?
Was Blackie a decent guy? Like, I imagine all the attention they got, the moral majority, the PMRC, all of that stuff was overblown for what it was, right?
Okay, Blackie Lawless. Very hostile. Oh, it's a scary looking dude to me.
Yeah.
The media portrayed the hype of Wasp as not only were they considered satanic, but they were the target.
Yeah.
They went after them even harder for a period of time than they did Motley Crue, which I thought was really silly. When they were going after Motley Crue.
And why do you think that was, Charles? What was it about Wasp? Yeah.
Well, at the shows, Wasp would throw meat at the audience, raw meat.
Yeah, that's probably not going to help.
The audience would tear it up like ravenous dogs. And I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. And so the media caught on to that. It was considered debauchery. It was considered every bad thing you could think of.
But I'm sure it was just a marketing thing. I'm sure it was just a marketing thing to get people to the shows.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It was all totally preconceived. Blackie Lawless was part of the mindset for that. He's brilliant.
I love it. I love it.
The fact that I was afraid of him and scared of Blackie Lawless. He was a frightening looking dude, man. You see pictures of Blackie Lawless in 1983. He looks crazy. He looked just like
I always
that
thought it,
in person.
I always thought he looked a bit crazy as well. But what you're saying is actually a pretty sweet dude when he wasn't putting the persona
very
on.
sweet guy.
Yeah, right.
But Chris, the most interaction I really had was more with Chris. As far as saying, and he was just always just absolutely cool. Life of the party.
Yeah,
and,
great.
It wasn't without its ups and downs, you guys. I mean, there was always a girlfriend issue or a disagreement. It's never easy. Like you were telling me, Simon, about how there's never a gig that goes off, scot-free with no issues. There's always some little thing. There's always something backstage. There's always some drama of some kind. You just rise above it and roll with it. It's rock and roll, right?
Hey, you can help me with something, Charles, because back in the day, I don't think I ever really got to the bottom of it. Not that I tried super hard, but the acronym of WASP, obviously back then with the moral majority, people were making up what the acronym stood for. I won't say all the things because we all know what they are, but do you know what it actually was?
We are Satan's people.
Okay.
What WASP actually stands for.
We are sexual perverts.
That's the one I heard, Andrew. That's and the other one that I heard from some heavy metal magazine as well is that it was something to do with the military. Like war, army, supply, something. So people would just make up things, I guess.
Now I'll say this: that is a fan-known thing from LA. That's what we all thought it was. Is it correct? I don't know, but it certainly fit the bill. It fit the bill. It did.
The bill. Yeah.
But what was really cool after WASP is I got to spend now after I got out of the club, working in the whiskey, bands like LA Guns and Faster Pussycat and Warren were becoming a thing. Rat was already established. Their EP was out. Tawny was on the cover. Her and Robin in and out of the most ridiculous relationship. He had already, by that time, he had broken up with Susie, one of the waitresses at the whiskey. She was my girlfriend's best friend. They had shared an apartment. That's my connection to Robin. We dated waitresses from the same club who shared an apartment. We were just driven together, quite literally. But getting to see, I'm going to give Tracy Guns a shout out. I hope he sees this. One of the sweetest guys in rock and roll, period. You want to talk about an attitude of just, he's just so humble. He's kind. He's considerate. One of the nicest memories I have of rockers are Tracy Guns and, a very young Slash. Slash was a character too. But let's talk about LA Guns and Faster Pussycat. Those two bands took the place in Hollywood and LA of Motley Crue and Rat because they were already touring. They were touring quite literally. Rat was out with Scorpions. Motley Crue was out touring. And funny thing let's go back to Motley Crue for just half a second. Their first tour, they didn't tour the United States. They toured the entire world. Back. Rat was a little different. There is the paths they all took were completely different, but they all possessed sort of that same vibe. It was really interesting. But that being said, LA Guns and Faster Pussycat had a camaraderie. Now these guys, they were not like they were at the same time coming up. I mean, within 6 months of each other, 3 months of each other. You got Faster Pussycat and LA Guns. You would think that those two bands would have drama. You would think there would be some kind of a rivalry between them. Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Those guys got along wonderfully with each other.
That's great. I imagine too, Charles, that coming up on the LA strip scene like these bands did, it was probably more helpful if they were working together too, right? Like they were all pumping each other up. So it would make sense to me that some of these bands became quite good friends and there was a camaraderie. But were there any that you know of that completely hated each other and would never help each other in terms of putting a show on or selling tickets and all of that stuff?
Kevin Dubrow had a horrible track record with any kind of interaction with anybody, even his own bandmates.
Yeah, really? Wow.
The single most worst, exactly what you're asking about, I immediately think of Kevin Dubrow and Quiet Riot. And actually the band Dubrow before they changed the name to Quiet Riot. There was a couple other bands that there was a lot of drama with. You know, okay, so David Nesdahl, rest in peace, David. He had a friend, and Anthony Steele was his name. Is his name. Anthony's still with us, thank God. He had a band called the Black Sheep. I've talked about this before because it pertains exactly to your question. They shared a dressing room one night with a band called Sarge. And Sarge would pound beers and do every drug they could possibly do before they hit the stage. Just a fact. That's just the way it was. They were there to get wasted, and it was a pay-to-play thing. They paid to play. Okay.
Yep.
They shared a dressing room with the Black Sheep, who had the best work ethic of any band I'd ever seen come through the Whiskey a Go-Go. These guys were serious. They were seriously driven. And they were actually cross genres in music like you do. They would play at the Potato in the Valley. You'd see them there regular. They were session musicians. They hung out with a totally different crowd. And so I got to see them at the exact same time, in contrast with a band with the worst work ethic and just and it was horrible.
Yeah.
Arguing, screaming at these guys. Just like that. There were lots of spats, bickering that broke into fist fights. I've seen drumsticks fly out of a dressing room. I've heard guitars bounce off walls, and fist fights break out over some of the most what we would all consider to be why would they do that?
Yeah.
That's rock and roll. That's, everyone's there to do their job and to do what to make their rock. And sometimes it just doesn't work out.
And I imagine too, subconsciously, even if a band's not, deliberately going out to do it, but you're there to stamp your place on the strip as well. And so if that means not putting up with any crap from another band, even if it was over a little thing, then I guess that's a way that people might hear about it and go, oh, you don't mess with whoever, Motley Crue, or you don't mess with Rat, or it doesn't matter who it is, but So I can imagine that too, if I was in a band and trying to establish ourselves. Yeah, if there's going to be some trouble, you got to make sure you're the ones that come out on top, right? Because word will get around, I suppose.
Exactly. It was nice to see bands get together, and so interesting enough, Motley Crue and Rat, they would cross videos. You might catch a Tommy in a Rat video.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Same thing with Faster Pussycat and LA Guns. But back to one other thing about the Troubadour. Talking about, I don't want to forget this because this is
Charles, the Troubadour was one of the places that was managed by, owned by Mario, or no?
No.
Separate to his, right? Because his was the Whiskey, the Rainbow, and what was the third one?
Roxy.
Troubadour was a different thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's a couple of miles away.
Okay.
And the most beautiful thing about the Troubadour, and this mostly occurred when I was in junior high school, and I would hear my brother tell stories about this. And then I would hear the stories about it right after. When Elton John first came to the United States and came to Los Angeles, he played at the Troubadour, the first LA show he ever did.
Right.
They booked him the first night, and then they played 6 more consecutive nights to sold out crowds. Okay. At the Troubadour. Neil Young got his start in LA at the Troubadour. Period.
Yep.
Joni Mitchell. Metallica played their first show at the Troubadour. Interesting enough. They were
Because
trying to get booked at the whiskey. I told you the James Hatfield story. I was standing at the time clock, waiting for the club to open. And this guy comes walking up next to me and he says, "Hey, are you Charles?" Or he said, "Chuck." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, I'm James. And he shakes my hand. And I said, "James, nice to meet you." And he goes, "I've seen you backstage. I just went up and I was talking to Michelle. I submitted our tape and hopefully they'll get us booked in here." And that was James Hatfield.
And so it sounds like the way you're saying it, Charles, that he actually was kind of unassuming and sweet. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. And
great.
He looked like such a Simon. I want to talk about a rock star. He's standing there in cowboy boots.
Yeah.
With leather pants, just fit to the nines, with the most bad leather jacket. He was wearing a Judas Priest t-shirt. Had a Judas Priest t-shirt on, which in those days was like really cool. That was super cool. His hair was long. It was perfect. His face was completely clean shaven in those days. And he was just so nice, so nice. But I got to see Cliff Burton backstage with Trauma for a year straight. I saw Lars and James poach Cliff from Trauma. I got to watch them do that in real time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just really cool. Somebody ever asked me if they ever say Metallica or Megadeth. My answer is very simple. If the Metallica version has Cliff and Dave Mustaine, the answer is Metallica. However,
I see.
Without Cliff and Dave Mustaine, my answer is Megadeth with Marty Friedman. That's my favorite Megadeth lineup. So, and I just have reasons for it. That's just
Marty Friedman is such a monster guitar player. A lot of people wouldn't know this about me, but I actually grew up listening to some of his early solo records that were on the Shrapnel label back in like 1986 or something. Yeah. And that he went on and of course became not just a solo record shredder kind of guy, but ended up in Megadeth. Is just so wonderful, because he's such a great versatile musician. And he's amazing.
Excellent. Hey, we can do this all night, you guys. But I thought I'd ask Andrew, how are we doing for time here, Andrew? I know you've got another show to do tonight.
Yeah, thank you, brother. We're gonna wind up. We'll come back, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll do another show with
we
Charles.
Should do.
I'm sure.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say we should do a part 2 and just take up from where we leave off now. I'd be totally down for that.
Awesome, you guys. That would be a lot of fun. I'd enjoy the heck out of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you guys want to subscribe to our channel, if you haven't already done that, if you're watching on a replay, please make sure you subscribe. I'm going to attach Hoss's social media links to this channel. Hoss's channel is already on our communities page anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so we ask you to go and subscribe to all the channels on that community page, all our friends there. Just take you 10 seconds to do that. We'll have some social media links for Charles attached here as well, so if you guys want to go and talk to Charles directly about anything that he's said, I'm sure he'll be able to make some time for you. But it's been a pleasure, Charles. And Hoss, I know you've been busy, bro. I know you're always busy, so we'll take you when we can get you, bro.
Well, look, I mean, we can talk about this after the show, but actually, if we wanted to do a part 2 same day and time next week, I'd actually be good for that. So we can talk about that.
I can't do that, bro, because it's Easter next weekend. So,
of course. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the weekend after, but not next weekend.
All right. Well, let's figure it out. But yeah, I'd love to do a part 2 and maybe the weekend after. Perfect.
Awesome. I'm going to say thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask Charles to say some few words, and then Hoss, I'll get you to end the show with your usual goodbye to everybody, and we'll come back on this channel in about another 4 hours' time if you want to hang out with myself, the Rock Professor, Brad, and we've got a guest host called Brody coming on doing 38 Special, Wild-Eyed Southern Boy. That'll be an interesting show.
Nice.
Great live band. Guys, I want to thank you for bringing me on. Let me run my mouth for an hour or so. Chat, I love you guys. It's great seeing you guys again. Can't wait to see you. All roads,
Awesome.
Sandra. All roads, sweetheart. Thanks, you guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. It's been a pleasure as always. I can't wait to do part 2. So obviously the 3 of us will figure it out. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you to all the people that have joined us live in the chat. We've had a bunch of very special VIP, the inner circle of people. Jacob. Oh, we got Taylor Greene in here as well. Hey, Taylor. Oven Gone.
Hey, sweetheart.
OU812, R2, R3. Neil Daly popped his head in for a little bit. Of course, the one and only guitar builder extravaganza. Robert Ranford. Hey, Robert. Gretch Zeppelin came in. Symmetry. Trev. Hope you're doing well, brother. Fran. Tim Thomas. Christopher Live Sour. Sandra. Quinton James. John ZD351. My brother from Melbourne. Ben Coombs. Adam Roach. Charles 75N, and of course Holly. So thank you everybody that's joined in live. It's been super fun, and we will do this again, fellas.
Take care, you guys.
Yeah. See everybody.